welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, Pacifica host Garland Nixon on the ground from his occupied D.C., along with race, class, political theater, donuts, and Sandwich Man.
Good evening. My name is Garland Nixon. Now, let me go to this. I don't know if you figured out what politics are now. They're going to stick these guys, some National Guardsmen on the street for 30 days or 40 days or a couple months, whatever. They're going to rustle up and harass some homeless people. I like this. They says, we're going to evict your homeless people. How are you going to evict homeless people? They've already been evicted. That's why they're homeless, right? We're going to run them out. Where are they going to go? Hyattsville? One thing for sure, they ain't going to Northern Virginia. There's wealthy people there. So they're going to send them out to maybe the Black community in PG County for a while until this psychological TV option blows over, and then they wander right back into D.C. This is nothing but another operation to bring the press out, to bring the cameras out, to bring some activists out so some white guy can get mad on the street and hit a cop with a sub, and then we all watch that. Hey, look at this. That guy stood up to the system. What did he do? He took a vegan sub and hit a police officer. Oh, boy, I'm thoroughly impressed by that. I mean, let me just say this. And, I don't often get in a race because I'm a Black guy that grew up in a mostly white area, right? But white people are a trip. There's a guy standing on a corner. I mean, I'm like, there's some cultural difference. But I'm like, there's a white guy on the corner yelling in the cop's face. And there was a brother there going, hey, it ain't worth it. Did you see the video? There's a brother. Hey, man, it ain't worth it. The brother was like, dude, if I just yelled, I'd probably got shot. The brother knew you pull out a sub on a cop, they're going to look at it. Hey, he's got a dangerous weapon. If the brother be like, no, it's a tuna fish sub. Close enough. Bam. That brother's getting shot. So the brother knew what time it was. He's trying to tell this white guy, hey, dude, man, it ain't worth it. Come on, back off. So he's in the cop's face. Oh, you're fascist or whatever. Oh, you're going to get us, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't know how much you know about real fascism, but in actual fascism, you can't go up to their faces like that. They'd shoot you on the spot. But I guess, whatever, that's fascism. If you're a middle-class white guy in D.C., an inconvenience is fascism. Good enough. So he's yelling in the guy's face, hey, you're a fascist, blah, blah, blah. And the brother's like, dude, man, come on, bro. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. He didn't listen. So finally, he takes a sub. And boy, he showed the system, didn't he? He stood up to the man, whack. He hits a cop in the chest with a sub. And I just put my head down when I watch it. I'm like, I'm watching political theater here. I'm watching a person who thinks they're standing up to the system by hitting a cop with a sub. Guarantee it was a vegan sub. Guarantee it was a vegan. He looked like the type of dude, he had on like a pink golf shirt. I'm guarantee you this. It was a vegan sub. And he showed that cop and he hit him with a sub. And I'm like, now you're going to get hit with a felony. Then he took off running. That was pathetic. I'm like, when I saw the dude run, I'm like, that dude certainly does not have a background in athletics whatsoever. Those cops were out of shape. They couldn't run. If that's a brother, that brother's getting away. I've seen brothers get away now. I have seen brothers get away. I've seen the brothers do something, and the cop, I've seen one time the cop grabbed the brother's bicycle. He thought he had the brother. The brother wiggled away from him, lost one of his shoes, but when his feet hit the ground, that cop wasn't catching him. Was not going to happen. That brother hit about a 4.340 before he turned around the corner and went up Fayette Street and Baltimore Street. And I'm like, and the cop took about 2 steps and just stopped because he had been in Baltimore City for a while. And he knew, that brother get about 10 feet on you, ain't no point chasing him because you're not catching him, right? But I'm looking. And I'm like, okay, so, hit a cop with a sub. You're running, look like you're in slow motion, look like you're running in mud. And the cop caught you. Look. Let me just say this, just as a matter of culture. If you run from the police, they ain't supposed to catch you. They got on heavy stuff. They eat donuts. They ain't into, for the most part, now I knew some brothers like me, I worked out. It was brothers that worked out right. I knew brothers that worked out right. So it was some brothers that could catch you, but not a lot of them. A lot of cops, I put it like this, and a lot of brothers that I knew that was cops, brothers and white guys, black guys, I say brothers, people that worked out, they were into power. So they're lifting heavy weights. They wasn't trying to, they didn't have the speed. They wanted to grab you and wrestle you down or something like that and put the cuffs on you. But if you got the running, you probably should get away. And I'm like, you ran from the cops. And I'm an older dude. I could get away from a lot of cops right now. I still can move pretty good, but I'm not, if you're a brother, I'll put it like this. In a black community, it's almost like a disgrace if you run from the cops that they literally catch you. That's not supposed to happen. I mean, would be pretty humiliating if the cops, if some fat, out of shape, donut eating cop comes out of Dunkin' Donuts with an extra large latte and you take off running and he catches you. You need to go to jail just for that. Right. But at any rate, so I watched this absolute humiliation of our society as some dude assaults a cop with a stinking sub and then gets caught in like 10 steps. I'm like, everything is wrong with this picture. Everything's wrong with this picture. But all that and all the cops are going to do is wander around on the streets for 30 days for a big photo op. Ain't going to have no effect. Then Trump and his people are going to go, look what we've done. We've stood up to crime and it's dropped by, we've got a graph here. They're going to have a graph that shows how much it dropped when it didn't really drop. Then, of course, the Democrats are going to scream, oh my God, we got to stand up against them. This is fascism. Now, they ain't going to do nothing to stop a genocide. If you go to the Democrats and say, hey, there's a genocide going on, well, we don't have time for that. We've got a guy throwing a sub at a cop, for God's sake. We got to stand up and stop this kind of crime. Genocide, nah, we all right with that. Israel's got to protect herself. They're going to say something like absolutely ridiculous like that, which is why I'm no longer a Democrat, I might add. But at any rate, meanwhile, let me throw something at you. At the time that they're doing this sorry, ridiculous, absurd photo op of having a bunch of guys in fatigues wander around the street for 30 or 40 days and they'll do absolutely nothing. While they're doing that, let me read this other article to you. This is something you might want to be concerned about. Very similar. That's why I say it's a distraction. You look over here at this shiny object while I do my real dirt. Let me read this to you. So, they're going to send National Guard troops to D.C. to stop brothers from, I don't know, selling weed on the corner or something. Weed's legal, whatever. Listen to this article. Pentagon drawing up quick reaction force of National Guard ready to quell civil unrest at any moment. Listen to this. Pentagon, that's the military, drawing up a quick reaction force of National Guard ready to quell civil unrest at any moment. Troops would be stationed at military bases in Alabama and Arizona under the new reaction force plan. The plan for a domestic civil disturbance quick reaction force calls for 600 troops on standby at all times, ready to deploy in as little as 1 hour. The troops would be split into two groups stationed at military bases in Alabama and Arizona. The administration would rely on Title 32, a status in which the National Guard operates under the command of a state governor, but is funded by the federal government. Okay, so here's the deal. Think about this. Here's what they're saying. The government is going to put together a military force. What for? To quell civil unrest. You should read the Washington Post article, because in the Washington Post article, they specifically say, yes, we're going to put a civil quick reaction force, the National Guard, while you're looking over here at this shiny object in D.C., you're looking at that. Oh my God, look what they're doing. They're putting together one in the West and one in the East of this military group. If you read the Washington Post article, it says to address protests and riots. Let me start here. Aren't protests legal? Number one. Number two, don't you already have cops? Haven't they been militarizing the cops since, I don't know when, since 2003 or something? So they militarize the cops and they tell us the cops are militarized. Why? To handle protests and riots. Okay, well, I don't like that, but it is what it is. And now what do they say? We're going to put together military people. What for? As a quick reaction to quell civil unrest. Almost sounds like they're expecting civil unrest, doesn't it? Almost sounds like maybe they're expecting this fall, when students come back and people are sick and tired of the genocide, that maybe people will go in the streets and say, we're sick and tired of this genocide. And there could be civil unrest. Or perhaps, since, as we know, our economy has been on a cliff for a while, they could be looking at it and saying, we might have another 2008 style crash, and the people might come to the streets, and there could be civil unrest. And if there is, the government will be ready to crack down on them. Now, let me ask you this. Heard anything about that in Congress? Do you think the Republicans are going to say that ain't a good idea? Do you think the Democrats are going to go, we're standing to fight against that? No, they won't. because they all work for the ruling elite. And what is that really about? As we're looking over at this shiny object in DC, they're putting together a military force to say, if people come to the street to oppose what we're doing, we're going to put them down using the military. And they must be expecting some big civil unrest because they already got cops that they've been given tanks and everything. Look at the cops. Half the time the cops look, you don't know the difference between the cops and the Delta Force, right? But apparently that's not enough. They're drawing up a quick reaction force. Look it up. Search it yourself. If you don't believe me, search Pentagon Quick Reaction Force. There's a big Washington Post article about it, and you'll see they're putting together military forces to stop civil unrest. I suspect that they expect civil unrest. If you look at our economy, the way things are going crappy, if you look at the way they might start another war, and our economy crashes, if they start a war with Iran, the price of oil goes through the roof, the economy crashes, people take to the street, they want to have the military ready to put them down, ready to stop it. So while they do this, while they got us attacking the police with vegan subs from Subway. Boy, we're busy fighting the system, putting down the man. And while we are looking at that, they're literally putting together military people for the real civil unrest that they know is coming.
And coming up next on Arts Express,
tell me where the bomb is. 10 seconds or you're dead. Interesting. I'm the only one who knows where that nuke is. Well, then in that case, I'd say you'd better start. Oh, I didn't do it on purpose. There's like a ton of pollen in here.
We've intercepted chatter that Rayana Boyanov knows where that nuke is. She knows the identity of all our agents. We need someone to find the bomb without being detected, but it can't be any of you.
and those were scenes from Spy, in which Jude Law went undercover, though this time around a very different persona, as former KGB operative Vladimir Putin in Oliver Assayas' likewise seemingly top-secret Wizard of the Kremlin, in release at the Venice Film Festival next week. The French director will drop hints about all that during this conversation and his current French-language COVID lockdown drama, Suspended Time, directing films in both French and English, and a mix of the personal and political, as with WASP Network, about the struggles of the Cuban Five against U.S. imperialism. Assayas reflects on how, quote, it all started with Carlos, his political thriller about the Venezuelan revolutionary still locked away in France for over 3 decades, and who created the first ever uprising uniting Palestinians and Latin America. First, some scenes from Carlos, then Olivier Assayas.
How long have you been with us? You are still a boy. I need men.
So you don't trust me because I'm young?
You have to prove yourself.
Like you, I strongly believe that the Palestinian struggle should take at an international level. And I will be honored to contribute some of my modest skills.
Choose a code name.
I already have.
I am honored to meet the famous Carlos.
You're brave.
You fear for your life! I'm a soldier! I'm not a martyr!
Look at you. You are a wreck.
The Cold War is over.
You are a historical curiosity.
You betrayed us, and you will pay the price.
Wherever you go, they will find you.
Living under cover, the fear, the loneliness.
How do you expect it to end? My name is Carlos.
You may have heard of me.
Hello.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hello, Olivier Assayas, and welcome to our show.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.
Now, in creating this very personal film for you about the COVID lockdown and isolation, and with your protagonist filmmaker, do you feel that COVID period affected or transformed you as a filmmaker in any way, and by extension changed the film world creatively, personally, or politically?
It's what I wanted to figure out by making this film. Yes, during the period of the lockdown, I had a sense, I had a feeling, which was not necessarily correct, that things were going to change in a major way in the future. That the whole period, COVID period, lockdown period, gives all of us a new experience to share and eventually impose on you, if you're a writer or if you're a filmmaker, or reflects on what it means to be at a standstill. And I thought it was one of the most fascinating experience I went through.
And I wanted to ask you, you've got another film out this month, The Wizard of the Kremlin, at the Venice Film Festival, about Russian President Putin. What led you to that film?
What led me to that film? I've always been interested in contemporary politics, and I think that it has always been an interest in real life. And I mean, it's something that came to me through the writer who loved my films, and he wanted, he contacted me personally to ask me if I was interested in the project, and then producers came around, and all of a sudden the book was a huge bestseller, in France at least, and I thought it was exciting after making a very small, personal, intimate movie like Suspended Time, to make a movie that you would use the whole world as a stage, who would deal with the politics of my time, who would deal in a much broader way, of course, with the way the world has been changed by the internet and the way politics function in a very different and mysterious way. And I thought it was something that was exciting to approach in film, because it had really never been done. So what I am attracted by when I make a movie, it's mostly by the idea that it has not been done, at least not that way. And there is the possibility, it gives me the possibility to explore the modern world in ways that are inspiring, stimulating for me.
And how did you see Jude Law as the perfect incarnation for you of Putin?
I was not into looking for the perfect embodiment of Vladimir Putin. I was looking for a great actor who could deal with a very difficult part and manage to explore it in all its complexities, in all its mystery. And I knew Jude. We met, as it can happen. We were together in a jury in a film festival. We got along really well, and I thought that Jude had the depth and the smarts and to dive into the complexities of a character like Vladimir Putin. So again, it was not a matter of doing an impersonation. I think that Jude is very different from Vladimir Putin, and what concerned us was to be believable, to have someone who would not be absurd as the character. The matter was to have the best possible actor.
And I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about a different predicament now following the COVID crisis, the endless war transpiring around you right now over there in Europe?
It's certainly something that I could not have imagined coming, and no one saw coming. I am not so good at politics. I mean, I think that then I suppose that my film is an echo of that situation. I think that whatever is the situation in Europe today, it's generated by two agents of chaos, one being Vladimir Putin and the other one being your American President Donald Trump. We live in a world that is dependent on the recklessness and the irresponsibility of leaders of two great countries, and Europe is pretty much on its own.
And your vast body of work delving into both the personal and political, including Carlos Wasp's network about Cuba and the Wizard of the Kremlin, why does both the personal and political inspire you creatively? And do you see anything connecting the two very different ventures for you in any way?
Well, I think that to me it all started with Carlos. Carlos just made me realize that I could make movies different on a bigger scale and dealing with modern history. I'm not comparing myself to William Shakespeare, but I mean the historical plays of William Shakespeare has been an inspiration, giving me a sense that you could deal with modern history on a from a human angle, and of course it gives you a lot more nuance, a lot more subtlety than if you are dealing with politics in a straightforward way. So the character of Carlos is an extremely unlikable character, but still he has some sort of humanity, and he lived through. I mean, he has been a reflection of his time, and using him as a central character allowed me to deal with the history of his time and the complexities of the Middle Eastern politics of that time. And so I suppose it's what gave me the fact that I enjoyed making Carlos, especially with Edgar Ramirez, is what, just opened the door for me to new projects, to ideas that I would not have touched. And that's why I made Wasp Network, and that's why I'm making a Wizard of the Kremlin today, which is something that belongs to a strain in my work, which is about having some sort of reflection, discussion, conversation on the state of the world as it is in my time. But I don't think that my next film will be anywhere close to the Wizard of the Kremlin. I mean, I think I need to make once in a while one of those movies, because it's again a material I've always been attracted to, fascinated by, even I should say.
Okay, thank you so much, Olivier Assayas, for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong, and I grew strong, and I learned how to get along, and so you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lock, I should have made you leave your key. If I'd have known for just 1 second you'd be back to bother me. Oh, now go, walk out the door, just turn around now, 'cause you're not welcome anymore.
Hi, this is Gloria Gaynor giving a shout out to all the listeners of this wonderful program, to the wonderful listeners of Arts Express.
And speaking of suspended time, Gloria Gaynor has until December to make up her mind on whether she'll turn up for that Trump honor at the Kennedy Center in D.C. And coming up next on the show...
So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But while you swelter down there in your shelter, you can see me on your TV. While we're attacking frontally, watch Brinkley and Huntley describing contrapuntally the cities we have lost. No need for you to miss a minute of the agonizing Holocaust. Yeah!
Hi, this is Jack Shalom. Last week we began our conversation with investigative journalist and professor Thomas Bass, author of a new book called Return to Fukushima. We discussed how the explosion of the nuclear reactors at Fukushima, Japan in 2011, set off by an earthquake and tsunami, is still an ongoing international danger. We left off where I was appalled to learn about the danger from, wait for it, blueberries. So now, part 2 of our conversation with Thomas Bass, author of Return to Fukushima. So how does that play out on the international stage in terms of trade?
I forgot to mention radioactive blueberries.
Oh, no kidding.
One of the smartest and best researchers on this subject is Kate Brown at MIT. Kate Brown spent a lot of time around Chernobyl, and she noticed that the blueberries were highly radioactive. And then she did further research and discovered that there's an international trade in blueberries. They make their way from Ukraine into Canada. The way this is handled is that the highly radioactive blueberries are mixed with other blueberries that are not radioactive. And then they make their way into the United States as Canadian blueberries.
Oh my gosh. I eat so many blueberries in a day, every morning.
Yes, Jack, we've been told to eat blueberries.
Yeah.
And you may notice that most of your blueberries, I think they're labeled as coming from Chile, aren't they?
Yes, a lot of them are.
You have to wonder, do they in fact come from Chile? And what kind of controls, what kind of limits are put on toxicity of blueberries out of Chile? And is there some reason why we're eating more blueberries from Chile than we are from New Jersey, which grows large amounts of blueberries? Anyway, there is international traffic in radioactive food. And the laboratory that took a look at this mushroom for me actually studies food that's imported into Japan from Europe. And they often find that it's more radioactive than food that is allowed to be eaten in Japan.
Staying on this theme of international consequences, how did the 2020 Summer Olympics affect the Fukushima narrative?
Yeah, well, it was a kind of Potemkin enterprise for the Japanese. They opened the Olympics. The Olympics opened a year late because of COVID. But they opened the Olympics in Fukushima. They made a big deal out of maintaining that Fukushima had been cleaned up and that the Zuma baseball stadium was perfectly healthy and safe for people. And they actually ran the Olympic torch through Fukushima's towns, some of which were abandoned towns. And the Olympics actually opened in Fukushima. And it was part of an enterprise on the part of the Japanese government to pretend that the area was in good condition and opened for resettlement, and that the Tokyo Electric Power Company had everything under control.
Is there a Japanese resistance movement to the nuclear industry?
Yeah, there's a large movement. Thousands, tens of thousands of people gathered and protested in Japan. But like every protest around the world, our memories are so susceptible to being altered by propaganda and huge, massive waves of it that are dumped around our heads, that Japan is positioning itself to reopen its nuclear reactors. It's even positioning itself to start building new ones. As happens after every nuclear disaster, immediately there's resistance to nuclear power, which is, the world's most foolish way to boil water. It's enormously expensive, enormously dangerous, and 80 years after the development of the atomic bomb, we still have no idea what to do with radioactive waste.
How did a country with a history of horrific internal destruction from nuclear weapons become a country reliant on nuclear power. How did that happen?
Yeah, Jack, you're asking a serious question there. There's a great Japanese writer, actually a Nobel laureate, who said that when it came to Fukushima, the Japanese had dropped another atomic bomb on their heads. This time they dropped their own bomb on their heads. So you're asking the question, why would Japan, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, decide to embrace nuclear power plants? It involves a CIA operative with large sums of money and actually had his hands on the largest newspaper in Japan and actually managed to put on an Atoms for Peace fair in Japan and then became head of the Atomic Energy Agency of Japan. This one individual, with the aid of the CIA, actually managed to convince the Japanese that they should emulate the United States. I mean, it still is an occupied country. It still has 50,000 United States troops in Japan. It's also true that Japan has limited natural resources, and they have a great need for power. And there was the promise of nuclear power that was offered to them.
You write that the atomic age involves a lot of magical thinking in the sense of wishful thinking. How is it that a whole new generation of well-meaning environmental activists, including those in the U.S., think that nuclear power is the answer to sustainable energy? Who is pushing this? How could they come up with this idea?
Yes, we're bathed in propaganda at the moment. It's absolutely amazing that nuclear energy is the solution to global warming. Well, nuclear power is not clean, it's not green, and it's not going to save us. It's the world's most expensive form of electricity. It's an extractive technology. You have to mine nuclear ore or refine it and then enrich it, put it in huge concrete structures in order to create nuclear power plants.
What about this idea you hear from Bill Gates or some hedge fund guys or, Elon Musk or somebody like that? What about the idea that this new generation of nuclear reactors, they're safer, they're smaller, they're more efficient. We have some great ideas. It's going to be flowers and roses for everybody.
Yeah. You're talking about small modular reactors or so-called advanced reactors. This is a ludicrous mirage. It's fake. It's not going to happen. We were in this position 20 years ago. We were in this position 40 and 60 years ago. Small modular reactors actually produce more radioactive waste than large nuclear reactors. They actually cost more to build, and it's not going to happen. I mean, none of them exist. This is what we call PowerPoint reactors or vaporware. And you put together these PowerPoints, you put together this vaporware in order to harvest subsidies. The government is handing out billions of dollars in subsidies, which Bill Gates and his colleagues, his nuke bros, are harvesting. You pick up these billions of dollars for your PowerPoint reactors, and then, as happened in Idaho, for example, the only small-scale reactor that was in the process of even being designed, much less built, was the NuScale reactor in Idaho. And that project collapsed. The company had harvested a quarter of $250 million or more in subsidies before it pulled the plug. And I'm sorry to say that small modular reactors, advanced reactors, these are dead horses. It's not going to happen. It's vaporware.
It's just so pernicious because you mentioned how could it be that someone like Oliver Stone makes a film extolling nuclear power?
Yes, indeed. That was Oliver Stone's worst film. I'm sorry. He made some bad films before. He was a hero of the people back in the days of the Vietnam War. But I'm afraid, I don't know what's taken a toll on him in the meantime. But his pro-nuke film was, in fact, the silliest and least informed film he's ever made. But Jack, you mentioned Oliver Stone is just one example of how the nuke bros have jumped on this bandwagon, but billions of dollars are being shoveled in this direction. So it's enough to make a lot of people believers.
Of course, there are alternatives to nuclear power right now. And unfortunately, any positive movement in that direction is starting to be dismantled. But what are the present alternatives, for example, to dumping the radioactive water into the ocean at Fukushima?
The fact that Japan is dumping radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean is a scandal. It's a confession on their part that they have no idea how to control this ongoing disaster. I mean, they're still pouring large amounts of cooling water onto these incredibly hot reactors. And then they were storing it in 1,000 tanks. A huge tank farm is what Fukushima looks like at the moment. And they pretended to clean up this radioactive water through some kind of advanced processing system. And then they had to confess that the water was not really cleaned up. They had to confess that it was still highly radioactive and still full of lots of stuff that can kill you, including strontium and cesium and 62 radionuclides. And then they had to confess that they actually have no idea what's in the cooling water because they haven't actually tested all of it. Just with a huge amount of fakery, they pretended that it's okay to be dumping this radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. Now, there are other things they could have done with it. You can turn it into concrete, for example. It's less radioactive when it's contained in concrete. Yeah, they could have built more tank farms higher up on the bluff, away from the next tsunami and earthquake. I mean, there are various things they could be doing rather than dumping into the oceans, which they pretend is a perfectly harmless enterprise.
One of the most important and insightful ideas in your book was the idea that, quote unquote, civilian nuclear power plants are never just civilian, and that nuclear power demands a nuclear state. So can you elaborate on that?
Jack, you put your finger on something that I think is really a crucial part of this nuclear enterprise. The splitting of the atom began as a military enterprise. It was designed to kill large numbers of people. Nuclear power has never divorced itself from this military enterprise. Atoms for war never succeeded in becoming atoms for peace, in spite of the propaganda. The two enterprises are linked. The world's first 13 nuclear reactors were all devoted to producing plutonium for atomic bombs. Every nuclear reactor produces plutonium. India developed its atomic bombs from a civilian reactor. Other countries have developed atomic bombs from civilian reactors. Every reactor that is built in any country in the world can potentially be turned toward producing atomic bombs. Civilian nuclear reactors, there's this pretense that they can't explode. Well, take a look at Chernobyl, take a look at Fukushima. You can pretend that atoms for war, it's a completely different enterprise from atoms for peace, but then try to explain how India managed to take civilian reactors and build bombs, or South Africa, or other countries that have done that. Israel, for example. And then what happens, of course, this enterprise is surrounded by secrecy. It has to be a state-managed state enterprise because of the huge expense and the advanced technology. You essentially build a nuclear state. This state, it manages to shuffle huge sums of money in the direction of building and maintaining nuclear reactors. And it also manages a great deal of state secrecy and control of information. This is a top-down enterprise. And anybody who cares about democracy and development of civil society should be opposed to nuclear power, even if it pretends to come in small form, because the only small modular reactors that currently exist are those that are out there powering nuclear submarines. Those are small modular reactors. They just cost, billions of dollars more than any civilian reactor would cost.
And as you say in the book, because of the secrecy and the money and the need to convince the populace that this is a safe endeavor, there's a whole culture of lying and corruption that necessarily is created because of that.
Yes, indeed. And the corruption has become so obvious that the head of the effort to build a nuclear power plant in South Carolina I believe he was convicted of bribery and corruption. The head of the state legislature in Ohio was convicted of bribery. And, the United States hasn't built any nuclear power plants in the last 50 years. And the percentage of power that we get from nuclear power plants has dropped in half. But the United States did manage to open 2 new power plants in Georgia. These are the Vodal power plants. And they were 7 years behind schedule, and the budget doubled from $15 billion to $30 billion. The ratepayers of Georgia are paying thousands of dollars extra in their utility bills because of these power plants. Once you look at the books, once you look at the sheer sums of money that's changing hands in this enterprise, it really is ripe for corruption and kickbacks.
Now, the push for AI, we know, is going to require tons more energy out of the blue. Some are saying that the way to power AI is through nuclear power. I believe this is part of Governor Hochul in New York. I don't know where you're based, but that this is all part of a neat little package they want to present to us. How do we fight this?
Yes, I am based in New York. I'm a professor at SUNY Albany, right in Kathy Hochul's bailiwick. And her scheme to build a nuclear power plant in New York is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous. And certainly one hopes that it won't happen. All you need to do is take a look at what happened in Georgia, and you realize this idea should go nowhere. But oddly enough, lots of people are lining up behind Hochul's idea, including the Albany Times-Union, the local newspaper. I don't know how the Kool-Aid is getting passed around so well, but there's certainly a lot of people drinking it these days. There is a plan afoot to reopen one of the 2 reactors at 3 Mile Island. Now,
because nothing could go wrong there.
Nothing could go wrong there. So, and smack your forehead with disbelief over that one, because there was a meltdown of one of the nuclear power plants. There were 2 of them. One of them melted down. And the second nuclear reactor there had been put in mothballs. It had been closed down. It was headed toward taken down. Anyway, the talk is now to reopen that nuclear power plant to power an AI computer data center. But that's a symbol right there of how the 2 enterprises are. There's an attempt to link them, at least in the public mind, so that nuclear power plants will be generating electricity for AI. And both activities are thought to be essential to the dominance of the United States in what, I'm not sure, in replacing people's jobs with AI.
That's why it's so important, as you say in your book, to get rid of this magical thinking, and especially on the left, because we're really going to have to fight back against this. As we wrap up, Thomas, what's the most important thing you've learned on your visit to Fukushima?
Well, Jack, I think the most important thing is that Fukushima is an ongoing disaster. It's not behind us. It's not over. It's continuing. I mean, I haven't added up the square footage, but I have the idea that an increasing amount of the world is going to be devoted to nuclear exclusion zones. Those are areas that are now highly radioactive because of industrial disasters. There are people who are very smart and astute and spending a lot of time on learning how to live in nuclear exclusion zones, what kind of techniques are required, and how you measure your food. And you don't eat food that's radioactive, and you don't forage for radioactive mushrooms. You learn how to carry radiation dosimeters around with you, and you put radiation detectors in your houses and learn how to operate them. It's unfortunate, if I'm right, that an increasing amount of the world is going to be devoted to nuclear exclusion zones. But underlying this is the realization that Fukushima is an ongoing disaster. Those reactors are still generating huge amounts of radioactivity. Enormous amounts of this radioactivity are being dumped into the Pacific at the moment.
Well, thanks so much for your book, Thomas, and your great reporting, bringing this back into the forefront and to our attention. Nothing could be more important.
Thanks for an excellent round of questions. Really much appreciated.
My pleasure. It's a great book. And thank you so much, Thomas. I've been talking with Thomas Bass, author of Return to Fukushima, a sober reminder of how so-called civilian nuclear power plants are actually Trojan horses for a necessarily militarized, authoritarian nuclear weapons-controlled world. This is Jack Shalom for Arts Express with host Prairie Miller.
And now on Arts Express, what may have gone down at that Alaska summit behind closed doors?
Hey, doctor.
Please, come in. Take your place.
Look, Doc, I don't usually do this, okay? I'm not the type to talk about my feelings. They say I talk too much, that I tweet too much, but I'm just telling, made America great again. I'm tired, Vlad. Not weak. Never weak, but tired. Maybe, just maybe, I need someone to understand. Not approve, just understand.
Mr. Trump, your voice is loud, but your soul tired. You are not weak. You are a prisoner of your own legend. You do not need approval. You need silence. You need to disappear, just for a while. That you need rest. And I know exactly where you should go.
Please, Doc, tell me.
This is where you have to go. You will thank me later.
Melania, you know I love you, more than I love golf. But Dr. Putin said it's serious. He said my mind needs peace. And he knows the best place for that, North Korea. Mental reset. And where better than North Korea? Quiet, cozy, and zero CNN. He said it's like Switzerland, but with missiles and more discipline.
Dr. Putin.
Hello, Dr. Putin. This is Melania Trump. I just want to ask.
Yes, Mrs. Trump.
Dr. Putin, I trust your judgment. But are you absolutely sure this is the right decision?
Yes, Mrs. Trump. He needs distance, discipline, and silence. North Korea provides all three.
I understand. Thank you, doctor. Please, take care of him.
Melania, I always do.
Arts Express Paris correspondent Professor Dennis Bro on what's up with that DCP summit and beyond, and not unrelated, it seems, to Europe's bid for forever war with the plummeting of weapons industry stocks in Germany when the summit was first announced.
This is Bro on the Global Cultural Beat, Breaking Glass. Today's episode, The Summit. Who wants a lasting peace and who doesn't? Oddly, who wants a lasting peace is Russia and maybe Donald Trump. And this is why Russia wants to talk about a secure future arrangement for the continent. And they're serious about it, and they also are very concerned with what's going on in terms of the nuclear situation and restoring treaties that Trump abandoned. And that's what they're hoping to get out of the summit. The other group desperately desiring peace is the Ukrainians. The last poll, 69% are for an end to the war. All right, that's on one side. Now, who doesn't? First of all, the U.S. deep state rabidly opposed to any peace. They love the buildup of arms and the possibility of selling Europe, which is essentially out of weapons, more weapons, along with the fracked natural gas from the Pentagon and U.S. arms manufacturers. Next is the European elite. They're all against this. The best they could come up with, since they have to seemingly be for peace, is favoring a ceasefire, which the Russians well understand is only an attempt to regroup for another war. Well, meanwhile, MI5, British intelligence, and the others load up Ukraine with what they have left, which is missiles. since their only other weapons were depleted in a war that was from the beginning a losing effort, which has allowed very unpopular leaders, I mean you, France's Macron, Germany's Merz, and the UK's Stammer, to stay in power. Also, on the other side of the ledger, most of the Republican Party, which Trump for the moment has cowed, though the neocons in both parties avidly want war and more war. Well, then there's the U.S. and European press, which wholeheartedly supports war with every piece they write. There's an amazing article in the New York Times cheering on the Toronto Film Festival for reinstituting an Israeli documentary from the point of view of the IDF about October 7th, without, of course, mentioning the amount of Israelis killed, not by Hamas, but by the Israelis themselves to ensure their own people did not get taken hostage. The same article cheered the rejection of a doc in last year's festival from the point of view of Russian soldiers, because even hearing the Russian perspective is too much for blinded and blinkered Western audiences. And finally, we come to the worst, most bloodthirsty proponents of war and against peace, the Democratic Party, whose Russiagate hoax, and this is well documented, laid the groundwork, helped manufacture consent for the neocon war on Russia, and by extent, China and Iran. They cannot admit that the whole thing was a political gambit to conceal what was in Hillary Clinton's emails, which detailed how the Clinton campaign worked to sabotage Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential run, which led to the Trump victory, and later, clinging to the same lies, the Kamala Harris debacle. Once again, the remade Democratic Party is the party of war and genocide, or rather one of the two parties of war and genocide, with the Epstein scandal engulfing both parties. These rivaling the Dems' Russiagate scam. The Dems are leading the charge against peace, probably the only praiseworthy moment in Trump's storied and corrupt electoral career. And so it goes in the waning days of what is now late capitalism and a late Western financial imperialist empire, both being every day slowly defeated by the global South's industrial might, either willingly or being forced into an anti-imperialist coalition. And this is Bro on the Global Cultural Beat, Breaking Glass.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.